Hello guys, Flanker here. In this video, we will take a deep dive into everything related to crafting skills and Ashes of Creation, their synergy with other artisan skills, power leveling strategies, artisan gear, and pretty much everything else. This video is the final part of a 3-part series, as the gathering and processing guides are already on my channel. However, there is much more useful information that I have to share with you in the upcoming guides, so consider subscribing to the channel to stay tuned. As usual, I would like to thank my Twitch subs and YouTube sponsors for their kind support. Crafting is the final stage in the production cycle of items and gear in Ashes of Creation, and it's crucial for one simple reason.
Crafted gear in the game is the best gear. One thing that I'm not a fan of is that you develop a crafting system in a game, right? And you've spent a lot of time making this from a material and resource perspective, all the tables that you can receive, all the connectivity in the economy and how crafting is associated with the game. And then you undermine the crafting entirely by presenting a separate route of gear acquisition that is on par with the crafting efforts. So here you have these people who are acquiring all of the resources, getting all the recipes, leveling up their professions, and then everything they make is less or equal to anything you could just have chosen the easier path of and gone down the questing and received the best gear. So what we do focus on is that crafters make the best the best things. And the reason they make the best things is because the effort required to make those things is monumental. And that's an important aspect of the whole gameplay loop.
As I mentioned in previous videos, mobs in Ashes of Creation sometimes drop gear. However, there is a high chance that the gear won't have the stats a player needs, and drops of heroic tier items and higher are extremely rare. In contrast, crafting allows players to create the exact item they need while also selecting the desired rarity, making it a far more reliable way to obtain gear. In this video, we will take a detailed look at each of the crafting skills individually. Prior to that, we will cover some general details that apply to all of them. Every 10 levels of a crafting skill and new certification level can be unlocked by speaking to the corresponding NPC. The amount of experience required to level up crafting skills is the same across all artisan skills. While leveling crafting skills is generally more challenging compared to gathering and processing, with the right approach and strategy, it's not as difficult as it might initially seem. Artisan gear and consumables can be used to increase stats related to crafting skills. There are only 2 perks related to crafting. Quality rating increases the quality of crafted items, and XP rating increases the amount of crafting experience gained. You can view these stats by pressing H and then opening your Artisan tab, where you will also find their descriptions. There are 3 types of consumables that may increase your crafting efficiency: scrolls, elixirs, and food. Scrolls provide a crafting XP buff that lasts for 3 hours and does not disappear upon death. There are 2 different types of scrolls, and let's take Carpentry as an example. When tier 2 and 3 workstations appear in nodes, you can buy Apprentice and Journeyman scrolls of Carpentry experience from the Carpentry vendor. Alternatively, you can use scrolls of Gathering experience. However, only novice tier scrolls can be purchased in the laboratory. Higher tier scrolls must be crafted by scribes. Finally, keep in mind that Gathering XP scrolls do not have a certification level requirement. For example, you can purchase apprentice level scrolls from a vendor once a tier 2 station is built and use them even if you only have a novice certification level. Now let's talk about elixirs. These can be crafted by alchemists in laboratories of tier 3 or higher. There are 3 types of elixirs, each providing players with different buffs. The choice of the right elixir depends on your preferences and crafting goals. For example, if your focus is on power leveling, the best choice would be an elixir that provides a crafting XP bonus. Food made by cooks provides a buff that increases the quality of crafted items. Similar to elixirs, there is a weaker buff that applies to all crafting skills and a specialized, more powerful buff that only affects a particular crafting skill. Additionally, this type of food buff is dual purpose, as each kind of food also provides a combat related buff. The effect lasts for 60 minutes but disappears upon death. Using artisan gear, consumables, and node buffs can significantly speed up the leveling process for crafting skills, allowing you to reach a new certification level faster and with fewer resource costs. Keep in mind that crafting is somewhat different from processing. Upon reaching a new certification level in processing, you will unlock all recipes for processed materials. However, with crafting, you will only unlock the basic recipes. The majority of other item recipes must be either dropped from mobs or purchased from other players. When it comes to power leveling, the approach will vary for each crafting skill. The general logic behind power leveling is quite simple. You need to craft items that require the least amount of easily accessible resources while providing the maximum amount of experience. Before we move to that part, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot. Currently, Carpentry allows players to craft bows, gathering baskets, and caravan components. With future updates, players will also be able to craft furniture, siege equipment, and ship components. Carpentry primarily synergizes with lumberjacking and lumber milling, as processed wood is the main ingredient in many recipes. Carpentry is the easiest crafting skill to power level. The fastest way to level up is by gathering any type of tier 1 wood, turning it into timber, and crafting small crates which require 5 pieces of timber each. You can either sell crates to a vendor or simply throw them away because their price is 1 copper. Here's the amount of resources required to reach apprentice and journeyman certification levels. Keep in mind that small crates can be crafted using any type of tier 1 wood. Additionally, the required amount of resources can be significantly reduced by using artisan gear and consumables that provide crafting XP buffs. Alternatively, if you want to minimize expenses, you can craft carriages instead of crates. They require 10 pieces of timber instead of 5, which means your progress will be twice as slow because the amount of XP you get per craft is the same. However, they can be sold to a vendor for 1.5 silver, which helps cover the costs of processing and crafting. Arcane Engineering allows players to craft all types of magical weapons, survey pylons for gathering, and some caravan components. It primarily synergizes with mining, metalworking, and stonemasonry. Crafting magical weapons requires copper, which is quite difficult to obtain in large quantities. Therefore, in order to power level Arcane Engineering, crafting survey pylons is the best option. Some of the pylons require copper as well, which is obviously a deal breaker. However, novice lumberjacking survey pylon requires zinc, which is easier to farm. In general, zinc and rubies are the main bottlenecks here, and currently it is the best possible way to power level Arcane Engineering. Here is the amount of resources required to reach apprentice and journeyman certification levels. By default, you get 100 XP per craft, but once again, the amount of experience you gain can be increased by using artisan gear, consumables, and node buffs. Crafted pylons can be sold to any vendor. Armorsmithing allows players to craft heavy armor and artisan tool belts. It primarily synergizes with mining, metalworking, stonemasonry, and tanning. The amount of XP you gain for crafting different pieces of gear may vary. For example, boots and bracers require the same amount of resources, but crafting boots gives 150 XP, while crafting bracers gives only 130 XP. Crafting a breastplate provides 200 XP, but it requires significantly more resources. So when it comes to power leveling, the best item to craft is the second sword, Division's boots. Basalt armor molds are easy to craft, so the main bottlenecks here will be zinc fragments and gramskin. Reaching apprentice or journeyman certification level is no easy task, but there are no other options. Therefore, consider crafting artisan gear of the highest rarity possible, and the same applies to consumables. This will help you to significantly reduce the amount of resources required. Jewelcrafting allows players to craft rings, earrings, and necklaces. It primarily synergizes with mining, metalworking, stonemasonry, and lumber milling. At the novice level, players can only craft copper and zinc jewelry. Since copper is more difficult to farm, choosing zinc jewelry is better for power leveling. Even though rings, earrings, and necklaces require the same amount of resources, it's still better to craft zinc chain necklaces because they provide 120 XP, while rings and earrings only give 110 XP. The main bottleneck for jewel crafting will of course be zinc. However, if for any reason you have copper that you don't need, you can use it to craft copper chain necklaces as well. Leatherworking allows players to craft medium armor, artisan pants, and bags for gathering. It primarily synergizes with hunting, tanning, and weaving. When it comes to power leveling, leatherworking is very similar to armorsmithing. The strategy is pretty straightforward. Craft River Stalker's boots to gain 150 XP per craft. Obtaining cotton threads is not an issue, so the main bottleneck here is gramskin. Farming gramskin can be a bit challenging, but don't worry, it's already on my list of topics for future guides, so stay tuned. Alternatively, you may consider buying gramskin or carcasses from other players. And here's the amount of resources required to reach apprentice and journeyman levels. Once again, these numbers can be significantly reduced if you use artisan gear and consumables that provide XP bonuses. Scribing allows players to craft various scrolls, including buff scrolls, guild creation scrolls, guild war declaration scrolls, and even treasure maps. It primarily synergizes with alchemy, mining, and lumber milling. When it comes to power leveling, there are two possible options, either novice enchanting scrolls or scrolls of constitution, strength, or pretty much any other buff scroll. They all require the same ingredients and provide 100 Scribing XP by default. The only difference is the price you can sell them to a vendor for: 7 copper for buff scrolls and 48 copper for enchanting scrolls. Therefore, you should craft buff scrolls only if you need them, and in all other cases it makes more sense to craft novice enchanting scrolls. As you can see, the main bottleneck here is red ink, which is made from ruby powder, and as you might have guessed, ruby powder is crafted from rubies. Magic powder, on the other hand, is made from tier 1 herbs and isn't generally a problem to obtain. Weaponsmithing allows players to craft all types of melee weapons and shields. It primarily synergizes with mining, metalworking, stonemasonry, and other artisan skills. When it comes to power leveling, weaponsmithing is the most challenging crafting skill, mainly because basic recipes require copper, which is quite difficult to farm in large quantities. In general, the main options are as follows: crafting either copper maces or copper shields. Both options are viable, but they have a few minor differences. Crafting a copper mace provides 240 XP, requires fewer crafts, and as a result saves a bit of time, while also reducing the total amount of processing fees. Additionally, it can be sold to a vendor for 1 silver. However, it requires an extra ingredient, the basalt weapon mold. While basalt is relatively easy to farm and turning it into weapon molds isn't a big deal, it does add an extra step to the process. Crafting a copper shield provides 160 XP and requires only 2 ingredients. However, you will spend slightly more on processing fees and a bit more time crafting them. Additionally, shields can be sold to a vendor for 43 copper. Alternatively, you might consider crafting Sanctus maces and shields. They require zinc instead of copper, but you will also need to obtain recipes and Sanctus emblems, which might become a serious bottleneck as well. In any case, all options are viable and the choice is yours. Also, I would like to once again emphasize the importance of artisan gear of high rarity and consumables. These are the only ways to make power leveling weaponsmithing a bit less painful. Tailoring allows players to craft light armor, artisan shirts, and bags for gathering. It primarily synergizes with herbalism, weaving, and tanning. When it comes to power leveling, tailoring is very similar to leatherworking and armorsmithing, but fortunately much easier. Just like with leatherworking and armorsmithing, crafting boots is the best option, in this case ambitious academics boots. Linen threads are easy to obtain, so the main bottleneck here will likely be gramskin. Fortunately, only 1 piece is needed per craft. Out of all crafting skills, tailoring is among the easiest. However, that doesn't mean that leveling it up won't take a significant amount of time. I hope you learned something new after watching this video, and if you did, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Also, you're welcome to join my cozy Discord server where we hang out, share memes, and talk about everything while we wait for the servers to open again. I am Flanker, and I'll see you soon.